So we're going to kind of move off the territory of the book, and we're going to talk about object-oriented programming. And it's okay if we don't get this 100%, if it doesn't totally sink in. You'll see it again in other programming languages you take if you continue to take any, or if you take scripting. I just want you to see an example of it so that it'll be kind of simmering in the back of your brain until the next time. And here's what I want to be able to do. I want to be able to do something like this. P1 is equal to patient. And then P1.name equals Fred. P1.address is equal to 123 South Main, right? P1.phone is equal to, 5556789, whatever, that kind of thing. And then P1.save, and then specify a file name, right? And then do the same thing again, right? P2 is equal to patient, and so on. Want to be able to do that kind of thing. Well, we can. We're going to have to create what's known as a class. Patient is the name of the class, and it's going to have several member variables. It's going to have name, address, and phone as member variables. And it's going to have something called a method, which is a function that's attached to a class called save. That's where we're going with that. Or so that we could do something like this. C1 is equal to circle. And where we can specify the radius of the circle as we create it. And then A is equal to C1.getArea. And C is equal to C1.getCircumference. I don't know why I switched to using the uppercase syntax like that when I normally like doing that. So I'm going to change them to like that. And then print the circle. We could have printed the patient too. We never did. Let's do that. P1 dot, print P1, print the patient. That's how we want it to work. So that then we could turn around and we could make a different circle with a different radius. And then when we got the area and the circumference, those would be different values. All right, so here's how you define a class. You use the class keyword. I believe we're on lecture W. Looks that way. All right. So what is an object anyways? An object is a collection of data and the functions, which are more properly known as methods, that act upon that data or use that data. So in this case, patient is our object. It's a collection of data. It's got 3 pieces of data. It's got a name, an address, and a phone. And then it's got some functions that act on it. It's got a save function, and behind the scenes, it's going to have another function to support the print. So let's go ahead and make a comment that this calls. So we're going to have to add something called str to our method to make it able to be pretty printed. All right, so class patient. In order for an object to be created, we have to add a special method that begins with these underscores and ends them, but it's got the word init, N-I-N-I-T, in it. So we're going to define a function called init. And every function we create that's part of this class, the first parameter variable has to be self. Although parameter variables, their names are meaningless, we could always give them any names we wanted to. If I was in another programming language, I would call it this, the THIS rather than self, but Python settled upon self, so we're going to go with that. And when init is called, it needs to create these three variables so that we can later fill them in ourselves. So what am I going to do? I'm going to type self.name equals quotes, self.address equals quotes, and self.phone equals quotes. And now for the save function. Well, honestly, I'm going to cheat on the save function. I don't think I'm going to actually write it out to a file, although it's not that hard to write to a file, is it? How do you open to a file for appending in Python? Okay. If we want to open a file for appending, we use a quote A. So let's go ahead and do that. Why not? We haven't talked about files in a long time. Okay, so this is one tab in, and these are all two tabs in. We're going to define another function called save to match that one, another method called save. And again, every function we define has to have this first parameter here that points to the object so that we can use the object's data. But this one takes a second one as well, doesn't it? It takes a file name. All right, so F is equal to open, file name, comma, quote A for appending. Appending just means don't erase the file each time. If we put a W there, it would open it for writing, but it would erase the file. Putting an A there opens it for writing, but it won't erase the file so that the previous contents are not lost. And now we can print this information out. Print. I'm going to put an F there followed by quotes like that. And then I'm going to do file equals F. Tell it to print to that file. And then we're going to close the file. Now, between these quotes, obviously, we actually want to put the good information, right? We want to put the name and the address and the phone of the patient. So let's put their name inside braces, self.name, comma, self.address, whoopsie, more curly braces needed. Actually, we need two more pairs of curly braces, one for the address and one for the phone. Self.address in end curly brace, comma, self.phone. So what does this method do? This is called a constructor because it constructs the object. This is just a save method. saves to file. And we need one more to make this pretty print here work, to where we can print the object like that. Well, I'm going to leave that one off for now. And you're going to see what it looks like when we don't add the method. I'm going to comment these lines out as well because we don't have that object created yet, and I want to test what we've already got done. All right, so here's our class. What's the difference between a class and an object? A class is the blueprint. The object is the house that you build from the blueprint. A class is a recipe, and the cake is the object that you make from the recipe. So it's the blueprint, it's the template. It's saying that we have these 3 pieces of data that every object of this class, of this type, will hold. I wonder if it's going to work. Somebody else's lecture W, okay. All right, so when I printed it, it just printed out this gobbledygook. But it did save the file. If I go and I look for that txt file, if I say open and I change my file type to .txt, I should be able to find one called patient.txt. Right there. And if I open it up, there it is. There's our patient. Good old Fred in his house on 123 South Main. Now, maybe it would have been nice to see some kind of message when it was saved, just so that we'd see, save to file. So I'm going to add a print statement to our save function. Print patient saved to, or patient data saved to, end quote, comma, file name. Right? Patient data saved to file. Now let's make it so that when we printed it out, we actually, excuse me, see the name and address of that person. To get that to work, we're going to have to add another method, the underscore underscore str underscore underscore. def underscore underscore str underscore underscore. And what this one does is it converts the patient to a string so it can be displayed on the screen with the print function. And again, every method, every function that's attached to this object has to have a reference to itself so that we can get its data out. Well, we already have this here. I can just copy that from that F all the way to there. If I copy that, and then I do S equals that, and then return S. Now when I try to print them out, it'll print out the name and the address and the phone number. And so when we printed them out, as advertised, it printed it out with good data. And it does so because when we try to print them out, Python calls the string function to convert our object to a string, which is then returned so that it can be printed. So we're going to create a second patient. John lives somewhere else. P2.name. Wait. My mistake. Get rid of that John there, because that was supposed to go here. Patient's name is Job. John, this patient's address is equal to 623 North Oak. And John's phone number is 828-2828. And we're going to save this into our patient file as well. And we may as well print that patient out as well. Print P2. Whoops, I accidentally called P1 here. I don't want to print save the first one a second time. There we go. Invalid syntax. I forgot my equal sign. All right, so now we have two patients that we've created. They did both get saved to the TXT file. If we go look at it, the TXT file's got multiple pieces of data for our first patient, just because it's being appended to. If I changed that to a W, it would erase it, but then if I changed it to a W, wouldn't be able to store two of them at the same time. Now we're not going to really fix anything about that. This is just for examples. All right, so we've created a patient class. The patient class supports these three member variables, and it has two methods, a save method and an str method for supporting printing. All right, I don't know if anybody's furiously typing along trying to get this to work yourself, but if you are, do you need me to keep it on the screen? Do you need to share your screen so we can find syntax errors, or how are things going?
Well, for me, I'm just paying attention to what you're saying right now. I'll get it later. I'll copy it off later.
Oh, sure. Okay.
But I'd rather not lose track of what you're saying.
Right. Okay. Well, then if we're all good, we're going to write the second class now, which is the circle class. So patient is our class. I should make that an uppercase P, because the convention is to everybody to make their class names uppercase to differentiate them from variables. And we've even seen that when we were using the turtle, right? It looked like that. Turtle was our class name. Okay, so how about a circle class? DEF circle. Now we need to add an init method, just like we did here. But this one's a little bit fancier, because when we initialize it, here we didn't pass any data in when we initialized our patient, but here we are passing some data in. We're passing in the radius. So DEF underscore underscore INIT underscore underscore parentheses self has to have that. But we want to be able to pass in this number too. And then we can set our self, our radius, equal to the radius that was passed in. Just for giggles, I'm going to add a debug message. Circle created radius equals, end quote, comma, self.radius, just for fun. That'll take care of that. Let's run it and see. Oh, I forgot the class keyword. I tried to define it as though it were a function, when really it's a class. So let's do that. All right, so circle created radius of 10. This is our constructor, or what other languages call a constructor. This is our member variable right there. Circle is our class name. All right, and what methods do we need? Well, we probably want to add an str method so that we can print the circle out. I don't think we need this print message anymore. We watched it get created. I guess it's not hurting anything. But we definitely also want to add two more methods, two more functions, a get area and a get circumference. So def get area of our self. So this is a method, which is a function attached to a class. And the area of a circle is pi r squared. Let's get all fancy and import pi from the math library. From math import pi. And then we can say that the area is equal to pi times self.radius star star 2 pi r squared and return a. Let's see if that works. I'm going to comment this line out so that I can actually test that. Well, it wasn't a syntax error, so maybe it worked. Let's do this get circumference, and then we'll print out the area and the circumference. Now, really, your import statement should begin at the top of the code. I may not put it at the top of the code, but I am going to get it out of that function because we don't need to import it every single time. Instead, I'm just going to do that. All right, get circumference looks a lot like get area. It's just got a different formula. It looks so much like it, like that I'm going to copy and paste it. Oh, I got a mistake here, right? These things are not lined up. Back tab that. Back tab that. I'm going to call this get circumf. And the formula for circumference is pi r squared. No, 2 pi r. So 2 times pi times self.radius. And we need to return the circumference that we calculated. I'm going to change that to r, like for result. How about that? I wouldn't have even needed to change those variable names if I'd gone like that. Okay, so now this one should work too. Let's watch that go. So the circle was created. We don't have any syntax errors. Let's print those results out. Print f quote circles area equals curly brace a in curly brace circumference equals curly brace c in curly brace end quote in parentheses. So pi r squared, r squared, r's 10, that's going to be 100. His area ought to be about 314. And that's what we got. Now we have way too many decimal points, you know, in places. It doesn't really need to be that preposterous, but it's working. And if we want to be able to print the circle out, like with this call, we will have to add that str method. Because if we don't, this is all we get. That doesn't look pretty, so we're going to add an str method. So our method to convert the object to a string f is equal to f parent quote quote excuse me and we're going to say that this is a circle with radius curly brace self dot radius close curly brace, and then return that string. Now when we run it, printing the circle out will work just fine, right? That's what he is. He's a circle with radius 10. Let's reverse those two things. In fact, let's just do this so that we're printing the circle out, and then we're printing this message out about his area and his circumference. So there we go. Not sure what I'm seeing here. Oh, C refers to the circumference. Bad variable names. C1 and C are too close to each other, aren't they? I should have given this a better variable name. Maybe I'll call them circle 1. Change all those C1s to circle 1. Now it's looking good. Circle with a radius of 10, and the area is that, and the circumference is that.
I have a quick question.
Uh-huh.
I'm only getting the, so it's only printing the text, like circles area equals A, circumference equals C. I'm not sure where I'm missing the.
You might need that in front of the quote.
Oh, that's probably it.
Yeah, that makes it a formatted string so that it will go ahead and expand these placeholders with the data.
Perfect. Thanks.
Sure. So what if we wanted to be able to do this? What if we wanted to be able to make a second circle and then check to see if they are equal to each other? If, don't need parentheses in this language, if circle 1 equals circle 2, colon, print, circles are identical, end quote in parentheses, else colon, print, parentheses, quote, circles are different. Well, that's not going to work right now. We're going to make it work. What it's going to do right now is it's just going to check to see if these point to the same memory. And they don't. They are two different objects, so they can't possibly point to the same memory. So it's going to say that the circles are different. And if we were happy with that behavior, if what we wanted equal to do would be to compare memory addresses. Now, what do I mean by memory addresses? I'm going to change the name of this function temporarily, and don't do this, so that it doesn't work correctly. So that when we print the circles out, we just get those memory addresses. When I print circle 1, comma, circle 2, I want to see their memory addresses. And so here we go, right? That's memory address for circle 1. That's the memory address for circle 2, and they're different, right? So putting that back so that it looks pretty, deleting that because we don't need that. That's all that it's comparing, are those strings there, or not those strings, but the numbers that we see there. And I want to make it so that this works. I need to add another special method that begins and ends in underscores called EQ for equals. So define def underscore underscore EQ underscore underscore self as always. But along with self, we need the other one that we're comparing it to. So we have to add a parameter here, other. And so this is a method for equality. How do we know if something is equal to each other? We're just going to check the radiuses of the object, right? If self.radius equals the other's radius, other.radius, colon, return true. Else, colon, return false. Now I'm going to rewrite this a little bit because I think that we have time to do one more class, and it's going to involve more than one piece of data. And when you have more than one piece of data, I like to kind of change up the syntax a little bit. So I'm going to change this so that it says if self.radius not equal other.radius. And then if that's the case, they're not the same. So please return false. Now I'm going to take that else out. We don't really need it if we are returning out of it, because if we don't return out of it, the only possible thing we can do is that. And if that's the case, if we did not return false, I want to return true. Now, the other way was just fine. I'm just doing it this way so that when we do our rectangle class, it will look very similar to this. Okay, and the circles are identical. But what if they were not? What if we had done that? Then the circles are different, right? Because it's got a different radius. And along with EQ, you can do GT, which stands for greater than, or LT, which stands for less than, so that you could do things like, and I'm not going to bother. So I'm going to delete this line as soon as I type it. If we wanted that to work, we'd create one called underscore underscore LT for less than. I don't think we need to do that though. All righty, so what I want to do now is I want to make a rectangle class that does the same kind of stuff, except instead of circumference, it's going to have a perimeter. So something like this. R1 is equal to rectangle, and I want a 10 by 20 rectangle. And the area of that rectangle is R1.get underscore area, parentheses in parentheses. The perimeter of that rectangle is R1.get perimeter. And then let's print the rectangle and then F quote area equals curly brace A, end curly brace, comma, perimeter equals curly brace P, end curly brace, end quote, in parentheses. So we know that none of this is going to work until we actually create that class. Right now, it'd just be a syntax error because this stuff's not defined, right? Rectangle is not defined. Well, it will be. What's the keyword that creates a class? Class. That keyword followed by the word rectangle, colon. And now we need to add a what? We need to add an init method. We'll probably add a string method. And we're going to want a get area method and a get perimeter method. So we know we'll need that. We know we will need that. We know we will need get area. Don't know why I started doing that. Get area. And we know we will need get perimeter.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Somewhere I got lost on init. What is init?
Init is what gets called when this line happens.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So when we did circle equals circle 10,
Uh-huh.
it called that. And since
Okay.
we were passing in a number there, 10, that filled in the radius so that the circle could then have a radius.
Okay, so init is just initializing.
Exactly, it initializes the circle.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So all of these things are going to need a self parameter. One of them is going to need extra parameters because the init method needs to accept data as well. So we'll be adding a couple more things to his init parameter list. We're going to pass in a height and a width there. So comma height, comma W. And so self.height equals the height that's passed in. And that's a good question, by the way. Self.w is equal to the width that's being passed in. And let's just print out a message saying rectangle created. I'm going to well, it's not in a state where I could actually run it yet. Now it is. Okay, so the rectangle was created. Let's add a string method for it. So the string is equal to f quote rectangle height equals curly braces width equals curly braces end quote. And inside the placeholders, we want to fill in self.h and self.w. Self.h, self.w. And then we want to return that string that we just made so that we can print the rectangle out. And so we do have the str method working. How about get area? Well, the area of a circle is just height times width. So return self.h asterisk self.w. And the perimeter of a circle is just as you're going, a rectangle. It's the height plus the width plus the height plus the width, right? So that you get all four corners, all four sides. So we're gonna do the result is equal to 2 times self dot height plus self dot width, and then return the result. So I'm going to uncomment these. I'm going to try it out. All right, and so it created our rectangle of 10 by 20. And a 10 by 20 rectangle has an area of 200. That sounds right, because 10 times 20 is 200. And its perimeter is 60, because if you go its height twice and its width twice, as you trace your way around it, looks right. Now let's add an EQ method for it so that we could do something like this. R2 is equal, Siri, I wasn't talking to you. R2 is equal to rectangle 12 by 20. And then if R1 equals R2 colon print rectangles are the same, end quote. Apparently I forgot my open quote. There. Else colon print rectangles are different, end quote, in parentheses. So to do that, we have to write another EQ method like we did for the circle. Because otherwise it's just comparing those memory addresses. And even if they contain the same data, it's going to say that they're different. And it's true that they're pointing to different memory addresses, but those memory addresses contain identical data. So we would like for that to actually print that rectangles are the same. So def underscore underscore eq underscore underscore self as always, but we need something to accept that as well. So comma other. So if self dot height not equal other dot height, return false. If they don't have the same height, then they're not the same. And one time when I gave this as an assignment, somebody pointed out that if you have a 10 by 20 rectangle, they wanted to make it so that it would be the same as a 20 by 10, that would say that they were the same. Now this one's not. This one's going to say that they're the same only if those things match exactly 10, 20, and 10 and 20. So if self.width not equal to other dot width, and when I said dot width, I meant W. Self.w not equal other dot W colon, return false. Otherwise, we can return true. And now since we have two rectangles of the same dimensions, it should print this time that the rectangles are the same, not that they're different. And indeed it did. Alrighty, anybody got any questions, or your stuff's not compiling or whatever?
My code's working, but it's telling me that the rectangles are different.
Probably because I originally had 12 comma.
Oh, okay. That's
20.
what it is.
And so, yeah, if I change mine to 12 comma 20, then it's going to print that they're different.
Cool. They're the same.
Cool deal. Cool deal. So what if I wanted to be able to make a list and add circles to it or rectangles to it like this? I'm going to make an empty list. And I'm going to L.append parentheses in parentheses, and inside those parentheses, I'm going to append a circle with a radius of 1. And I'm just going to copy and paste that and put like 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. So now we have a list. It's got 5 circles in it. We can step through them and print information out about them. So for every value in the list for V in L colon, let's print V, comma, F quote, area equals curly brace, close curly brace, end quote, in parentheses. And inside the placeholder, we want to print out his area. So V dot get underscore area, parentheses, in parentheses. So this is going to print out all 5 of our circles. We're iterating through the list. Each element in the list is another circle. So instead of just storing strings or numbers in our arrays like we have previously, you could store data of any type in an array. And there we go, right? The circle with a radius of 1 is that, the circle with a radius of 2 is that, and so forth. All righty, that's actually all that I had planned, and we have time left. What are we going to do?
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Okay, you just showed where you ran it. It showed the radius of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Uh-huh.
Where did it pull the number for the radius of each one of those?
It's being stored inside the circle. So when I call circle parentheses 1, it creates the object.
So it went,
that radius gets stored there.
Okay.
And so the print statement, I'm talking over you, I'm sorry. So the print statement grabs that radius and returns it so that it can be printed out.
Okay. Okay. I wasn't thinking about it going up. Okay.
Yeah, these are weird ideas. These are weird ideas. So I'm glad that you're asking the questions because it tells me you're thinking about it. Because I wouldn't expect you to get this the first time you encounter the concept.
Well, the thing is that as you explain it, it does make sense. Now, if I could write it all out in 2 minutes without looking at no.
Right.
But I wasn't I just wasn't connecting that it was pulling the information from up there, up the screen there.
Right.
Things that you had already written. So thank you.
Right. Sure. So for the same, for our rectangle, we could make, or just for our patients, L is equal to that. No, it takes too many statements to create a patient, right? Because we did not add name, address, and phone to the patient's init method. So each time we create a patient, it takes, these extra 3 lines to assign all that data. So let's do rectangles. So down here at the bottom, we're going to have an empty list, and we're going to add 3 rectangles to it. L.append, parentheses in parentheses. And inside the parentheses, we're going to use a rectangle that is a 1x2 rectangle. Guess we need a close parentheses because we now have 2 parentheses. Okay. And then I'm going to add a 2x4 and a 3x5. Now the same business. For every value in the list for V in L colon, let's print that value, which is going to be that rectangle message, and it's going to print a message. Well, that's far enough. Let's just do that first before we get fancy and add the area business. And so there it goes, right? It's printing out our 3 rectangles based on that loop. And we can just copy this and tack that onto our print statement. And I'll print out the area of the rectangles as well. And so it did. Rectangle created, rectangle with a height of 1, 1,2 is that. And a 2x4 is that. And a 3x5 is 15. I kind of feel like changing this height and width message a little bit. So I'm going to come up here. And instead of saying height is equal to that, width is equal to that, I'm just going to make it say high. So it'll say 2x4 or 3x5 or whatever. So there we go. And there we go, right? So a 1x2 has got an area of 2, a 2x4 has an area of 8, and a 3x5 has an area of 15. And yeah, I think that's about enough. I'm not going to assign homework on it, but if I was going to assign homework on it, here's what I would do. Write a class named Sphere that has a radius member variable. Add 2 methods. Get surface area and get volume. And add an str and EQ method. So I'll go ahead and post this as an extra credit assignment. If you feel like doing it, totally fine. It's going to look a lot like the circle class because it's going to have a radius. It's going to have 2 formulas, one called get surface area and one called get volume. The formula of those for easy to find, volume of a sphere. Right, there it is. Surface area of a sphere. There it is. Right. So if you feel like it, you can do that. All right, we are getting awfully close to the end of the semester. What I'm going to do Wednesday is we might do a very short lecture on something, probably how to create a graphical user interface. What's a graphical user interface? Well, all of our programs right now have just been text mode programs, which display text on the screen. Those are also known as console applications, this being our so-called console. But you could have applications that have windows and buttons, right? So we might do that. And then we'll do a review for the final. And I'll be honest, the review for the final is going to be so thorough that if you watch the review for the final and anyways, I'm going to give you the answer to every question in the final. So that will be what we do Wednesday. And then are there any questions over this stuff here? I think I'm going to end the class 10 minutes early, but we can hang out and talk about homework that y'all are stuck on or anything like that.
I don't have any questions about this this lecture, but I was having trouble opening the draw a turtle homework assignment.
Oh, let me go look.
Whenever I try to download the document, it says this file is part of an unpublished module and isn't available yet.
All right, let's go look. I'm going to stop the recording now.